Guys, how is everybody doing? Concluding off my Pet Cemetery review series, here's my ranking of all four Pet Cemetery films ranked from worst to best. Before I begin, I have to say this because some people just don't understand opinions. This is my list. This is my own personal opinion. This is not a definitive list. This is not the right list. This is my list. Instead of sending death threats to me or my mother, how about you just put your personal ranking down in the comments below and we will talk about it. Now, Pet Cemetery. This is a weird franchise because I'm just going to say this now. My number one to me is the only good slash great one. Other ones I could basically live without. But with that all being said, here's my ranking. And at number four, the worst of the franchise, the middle child of this franchise, and that is Pet Sematary 2. Now, for some reason, I feel I should like this movie. I feel that this should be a much higher because it has the returning team, it has the returning director. The only person that did not return for this movie was Stephen King writing the screenplay like he did with the original 1989 movie. Now, by default, I should really enjoy this movie because I love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And people have compared the original Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2 together, where Pet Sematary was a serious, dark, creepy horror movie, but then it takes a tone shift to where it's really campy, goofy, and funny. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the original. That's like a really creepy horror film, and then part two is just a fun little comedy film in a way where it has the same directors and everything. I feel I should like this. But I just don't. I don't like the tone shift of this movie. It doesn't match Pet Sematary, and some of the acting in this movie is bizarre, and I don't know what it is, but this movie looks like a a made for TV movie. Like the entire time when I was sitting there watching this movie, I'm like, this kind of looks like a made for TV film. Like the entire time, I was like, this is something you would probably watch on like Showtime or something like that. And yeah, the only thing that I really loved about this movie was Clancy Brown, and he's probably the only person that I would ever he's probably the only reason why I would ever rewatch this movie. He's the only person that is great about this movie. He's the only redeeming quality of this movie. And other than that, this movie is not very good. In at number 3 is the new kid on the block, Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I did not have any faith for this movie when it was first announced. When this movie was announced that it was coming out, that it was coming to Paramount Plus and all that, that it was gonna be a prequel to the 2019 remake, and at the time when I hated the remake, I was like, why are you doing it to the remake? That's like a remake basically almost everybody hated. Do it to the original. But I'm glad they didn't because this movie sucked. But I went in with low expectations, expecting it to be a passable Pet Cemetery film to where it was gonna do something here and there that might be clever, that might be enjoyable here and there. They could do something fun here, but they don't. To me, this movie doesn't even feel like Pet Cemetery, where you got a grieving father, where he's grieving over the loss of his son or the loss of his pet, and he decides and the Pet Cemetery, like, basically influences of, like, come on, come down here, bury your kids so it can cause mayhem and all that. They don't do that here. Instead, we don't see what happened to Timmy Baterman in this version, we just see the aftermath. Now, one, that may have worked, but two, if you've seen the original, you know what's gonna happen. And three, since it's a prequel, we all know what's gonna happen to a lot of these characters. Like, when I heard that this was a prequel, I did not have any faith. I don't like prequels. Prequels have never been for me. I've never enjoyed prequels. They're giving off answers that I never asked for. It's giving me answers I did not care about. And this movie does exactly that. It's giving me answers and it's expanding a story or a lore from one of the movies and making it an 87-minute movie. That is basically this entire movie. It's taking that short little moment in the original Pet Cemetery about Timmy Baterman, who fought in Vietnam, but he didn't come home because he died. But the grieving father buried him in the Pet Cemetery, and then he knew stuff that nobody knew and all that. And then shit goes down, and then the dad dies with Timmy Baterman. That is the entire film, and this. I honestly was like, oh, this movie's only an hour and 24 minutes. It's gonna blow by fast. It's not. It honestly felt like it was 2 hours. I'm not gonna lie. To where I will say this, the director of this movie, I did feel that she did a very good job directing. That's the one best part about this movie. I also just did not care for this Judd. This might be the worst Judd that we've ever gotten. Look, I love John Lithgow, but his version of Judd is okay. I didn't love him, and nobody's ever gonna outdo Fred Gwynn. You can cast Judd 1,000 times, and you're never gonna outdo Fred Gwynn. I'm sorry, but you're not. But to me, this Judd, I did not care for this guy. This is the character I was just sitting there the entire time, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a character that's supposed to be Judd." I honestly feel if you name this guy somebody else, nobody would care. Like honestly, he doesn't feel like Judd. And at number two, it's actually a huge surprise for me after rewatching it, and that is the Pet Sematary remake. Now, 4 years ago, if I were to do this list, this would easily be at the bottom. This would easily be the worst of the franchise back then. But I will admit, after upon this rewatch, I kind of dug the remake. It's still not very good. It has its issues. It's a remake. I don't like remakes. It never made sense to me why remake something that was already done and all that. But surprisingly, I would honestly not mind rewatching this movie if my mom or something like that, who I imagine would want to watch this movie with me, she came out and was like, "Hey, you want to watch Pet Sematary remake?" I'd be like, "Yeah, mom, I'm kind of down for that now." But if you asked me that 4 years ago, I'd basically say, "Fuck you, get out of my life. I'm never gonna talk to you again." But Pet Sematary the remake, so it has its issues. I understand why a lot of people hate this movie, but when you watch this movie, it's honestly not that bad. I would understand if you hate this movie, if you despise it, but it's not very good, but it's still enjoyable. I do like the sibling swap in this movie, even though they kind of fucking spoiled it in the fucking trailers. But other than that, really, when you think about it, there's nothing different here. They change a few things here and there, mostly just the sibling swap, and other than that, it doesn't change much. But I honestly felt that this movie could have readapted the book in a better way, sticking closer to the source material. I honestly would have dug to see that, but a lot of people probably wouldn't fucking care. But I would care because I recently started reading the book. Like this, I started reading this. It's honestly not that bad. What page am I on actually? I'm on page 40, but it's still like, come on. They could have readapted that book, and it would have been great, but they just did it for some reason. And I also think John Lithgow, who's a terrific actor, I love the guy. He does great in this movie, but compared to Fred Gwynn, he just falls a tiny bit short. Of course, coming in at number one to me, I don't think any other movie will top this movie. And that is the original Pet Sematary. If I'm being honest, this is the only great, if anything, good Pet Sematary movie. And I don't understand how this movie turned into a franchise. I don't understand how this movie got as many movies as it did. But hey, Paramount likes money. Yay. I love the original Pet Sematary. I honestly feel if it wasn't for pure nostalgic, it would probably not. What I'm saying, it's like, oh, it's number one, but it's still not very good. Like, if I didn't watch this movie when I was young, I probably wouldn't care for this movie. But I adore the original Pet Sematary. And if you were to ask me what the scariest film is that I've ever seen in my life, it would probably be the original Pet Sematary. When I was young, this movie scared the shit out of me growing up. I was terrified to watch it. I always had to have somebody with me to watch this. Now, when I was young, I had like a specific rule to I couldn't watch a horror movie at night or be creeped out, or if I heard a noise, I'd be like, "What was that? Don't kill me." That's basically how I was, and to where I had to have my mom or my dad sit on the couch, and while I just sat on the floor and watched the movie. But then when I was watching it, my dad would be on the couch asleep because he was an asshole and he wouldn't just stay awake. And yeah, it's a fun little story for me. But I love the original Pet Cemetery. And also the fact that you added Zelda, that how creepy she is, and the fact that it's also played by a dude, which is just makes my spine shiver. But I love the original Pet Cemetery. It's a great film. I love Fred Gwynn. I love this premise. I love almost everything about this movie, except for a little bit of acting here and there. And let's not forget is that sometimes dead is better. Thank you all so much for watching my ranking of all four Pet Cemetery movies. Let me know your ranking in the comments below, and if you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you will get notified for my latest videos. And of course, until my next video, I'll see you all next time.